Let's talk about the Cuban sandwich. Welcome back to Sprung On Food. I'm your host, Kae Sprung. This season, we're talking about favorite foods, the history behind it, and the role it plays in the world today. Joining me today is actor, writer, and director Eddie Mujica. Eddie, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Well, I am very excited that you are here. You are very knowledgeable, as we will get into, about your favorite food, the Cuban sandwich. But I have to know all about your relationship with this food. What makes it your favorite?
I think I'm knowledgeable just because, by default. So I'm Cuban. My parents both immigrated from Cuba to the U.S. years ago, and I couldn't help but grow up around. I feel very fortunate that I grew up around my culture and the music and the art and the food specifically, which I love. So it brings so much nostalgia, the taste of it. Whenever right now I'm in Chicago, no matter what city I'm in, I try to seek out Cuban food and see where the best Cuban sandwich is because it tastes so good, but it also reminds me of home and my family.
And how is Chicago stacking up so far? Have you found some good Cuban food, a good Cuban sandwich? How are things shaping up over there?
There are some. I used to be here years ago, and there was one place that I used to go to, 90 Miles Cuban Cafe, but I've heard that they're either around or not around. They used to have two locations. I'm not quite sure. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with them because they were sort of like the go-to. But I have found one or two spots that aren't too bad, but there's just nothing like home, you know?
And tell me about the version at home. What makes it so spectacular, memorable, nostalgic?
One of the reasons is it's so much more affordable back home. You can go to any ventanita, which translates to a window. It's like a restaurant has a little side window, and you can get a Cuban sandwich for like no more than $5. And anywhere else, it's like we're talking $10, $15, $20, and that's too much for a Cuban sandwich. But there's something, and also the big part of it is the Cuban bread. Outside of Miami or outside of Florida, I guess, you go to a place and sometimes they have a Cuban sandwich, but it's with different types of bread. It's with like a French bread or Italian bread. And I'm like, no, it needs to have that Cuban bread texture, the little crisp outside, but the soft interior. And yeah, there's just something about eating it in Miami. You're fully immersed in the Cuban culture that adds that extra miscellaneous qualities to it.
Yeah. And do you ever, I don't know if you like to chef it up at home, do you ever make them yourself?
I have not, just because I don't have a way of pressing the sandwich. Like maybe I should invest in one of those, like a sandwich press or something.
Like maybe they make these little panini, not a George Foreman, that's a different function, but I don't know, maybe it serves both. I'm not sure. Like maybe a little panini press, but does it then get the little grooves in it? Is that allowed? Is that not allowed? I have to ask the professional.
I would say a George Foreman grill, because I had one in college. I was like, do they even make those anymore?
I don't know. I just went back. In my mind's eye, it's still like the year 2000.
Yeah.
So
totally.
I don't know.
What is time? But yeah, it does have the grooves. So maybe I should look and see if George Foreman's still hawking his sandwich presses.
Or anything else that serves a similar function, but instead of, getting a restaurant grade. But listen, you live your life, and if that speaks to you, you do that. But I'm just thinking of like portability, counter space, and whatnot. Maybe.
Sure. And if George Foreman is listening and wants to, sponsor your podcast, then let's
listen. I don't know. Yeah, very few times. I'm usually the one to say to the brands, you can sponsor, but I love the fact that you did it for me. And also, they can send you a complimentary. We all win. You know, they're going to send you the grill. They can sponsor this episode. Everybody wins.
We'll happily give my address once we stop recording.
Yes, offline and to their people exclusively, not into the universe. Yes, virtual handshake. You have my word. Well, of course, to better understand and appreciate our food, we've got to know where it came from. Today, we're getting into a sandwich that's crispy, cheesy, porky, and controversial. Yes, controversial, because the Cuban sandwich, or Cubano as many call it, is more than a sandwich. It's a history lesson, a cultural symbol, and depending on who you ask, the cause of one of Florida's fiercest food rivalries. From Havana to Tampa, from Miami to your neighborhood cafe, it's time to press into history. Let's set the scene. Havana, mid to late 19th century. Cuba is still under Spanish colonial rule. The city is humming with cigar factories, sugar exports, and coffee trade. And workers need something quick, portable, and cheap to eat to keep them going. Enter the Mixto, the sandwich ancestor of the Cuban we know today. Mixto means mixed, and that's exactly what it was. A simple combo of meats, usually roast pork with a slice of ham, layered into long loaves of crusty Cuban bread. Affordable, filling, and easy to carry. Basically, the perfect working man's lunch. Now, important classification here. The Mixto wasn't yet the Cuban sandwich as we know it now. There were no Swiss cheese slices melting into the pork, no pickles cutting through the richness, no mustard tying everything together. The Mixto was more like the rough draft, Havana's gift of a blueprint. But without Havana, without that early template trifecta of pork, ham, and bread, there would be no Cuban sandwich. Eddie, loving the composition of the Cuban sandwich as much as you do, if we never graduated from the Mixto, with this meat and bread combo, do you think that you could love the Mixto as it is?
I appreciate, as a writer, I appreciate what a rough draft, like the purpose that it serves. But we all know that it's not the final version. I don't share often my first rough drafts. It takes me a couple drafts to get through and then I'll share. So while I appreciate it, no, I'm glad that we achieved the final stage of the final version of a Cuban sandwich.
Yes, we paid a little bit more attention, a little more thoughtful, gave it some iterations. Yes. We got there. Okay, so shout out to the Mixto for its origins.
Great name too. Fantastic name.
Yeah. Right? It like whoever was in charge of the PR and marketing at that point, like chef's kiss.
Yeah, they actually went, I feel like even though the sandwich got better, they took a step back with the name, because the Cuban sandwich is just, that's what it is. It's no originality. It's a sandwich that happens to be Cuban, versus Mixto makes you think like, oh, what's this?
Right. A little intrigue. It sounds a little bit exotic.
Also, Cubans are very prideful. So, I mean, look at me. I'm a Cuban American on a podcast, and they asked my favorite food, and I had different choices, but I chose the Cuban sandwich. So it's fitting that they're like, this is our sandwich. It's the Cuban sandwich.
Yes. And the name shall remain. Yes. Well, let's jump to the 1880s and 1890s. Thousands of Cuban cigar workers leave Havana and head to the exotic land of Ybor City. Where is that, you might ask? Well, it's Tampa, Florida, which becomes America's cigar capital. They bring their food traditions with them, including the beloved Mixto. If you want to understand the Cuban sandwich, you have to understand Ybor City. Eddie, I know you've heard of it, but have you ever been to Ybor City?
I actually have been to Ybor City, yes. I was so nerdy. When I was in high school, I was in a drama and theater, and we would do, just like sports has districts and state championships, theater also has this on a much...
Wow, sidebar, how does that work?
So they have different categories. We were a part of the International Thespian Society. Shout out Troop 1466 at Miami Springs Senior High.
Shout out.
You compete in individual events. So you do monologues or you do scenes. And if you make it to, if you go to districts, if you get superiors, which is the highest ranking, you qualify for state. And states took place in Tampa. So I remember one time we went to Tampa and then spent a couple hours in Ybor City. And I was just going to say, it's been years, but I remember it's kind of like a little bit like some version of Key West mixed with the New Orleans, which is also Key West inspired. There's a lot of weird pirate culture in Tampa and Ybor City. I mean, their sports team's the Buccaneers, but like Ybor City it is a port city, a port town, so it makes sense. But yeah, it's quite a bizarre place.
Did you get to experience a Cuban sandwich while you were there?
I did not. I did not become aware.
Time was too short.
Yeah, I did not become aware of the Tampa Cuban sandwich until much later.
Okay. So let's set the stage. The year is 1885, and Tampa is, let's just say, not exactly the bustling city it is today. They weren't having any theatrical competitions, that's for sure. Back then, it was more swamp than skyline. Enter Vicente Martinez Ybor, a Spanish cigar manufacturer who had already built a cigar empire in Havana and Key West before looking for a new home in Tampa. Ybor was looking for a fresh start, somewhere he could roll cigars without labor unrest, high costs, or the constant headaches of moving product through bottleneck ports. What does he do? He picks up a chunk of land northeast of downtown Tampa and decides, you know what? Let's build an entire community here. Factories, housing, shops, clubs, the works. And just like that, Ybor City is born. Eddie, we see what Ybor's vision of a city is looking like. If you were to build your own city, what types of places and things would be in it?
Oh, that's such a great question. I'm putting on my The Sims, Roller Coaster Tycoon, old school computer games. What would I? Yeah, I don't know. I do, and I really love that I grew up by the beach. I'm from Miami. I didn't grow up on the beach. I grew up inland in Hialeah, but to have access to a beach, nature, I'd be surrounded by all types of nature. I feel like before I'm putting any restaurants or buildings or anything, I'm making sure we have a beach or some sort of lake nearby, that we have trees, we have hiking areas. If we could throw in I'm talking different landscapes, having also lived in California and having mountains, if we can just combine the best of all of these and then drop in people and see what they build. I don't want to be too in control and kind of demand that we have a specific type of restaurant or anything like that. Yeah.
Sure, you can put your influences out there. Maybe you can cherry pick a few here and there. But I like where your mind's at. Make it a true community where everybody really contributes to what they also want to see in the area.
Yes, that's my soft pitch in order to gain a lot of support and try to get this town going.
Is there a working name for the city?
Mixto. I'm taking it.
Hell yes.
Because it's a mix of different environments. It's a mix of different people. So Mixto. Yeah, I'm taking it back.
Beautiful. Oh, this is a full circle moment. I really like where this is going. Okay, this is great. Okay. Now, why would immigrants come to what was basically mosquito country at this time? Simple. Jobs. Cigar jobs, and lots of them. By the turn of the century, Tampa was the cigar capital of the world, churning out hundreds of millions of them each year. Picture enormous brick factories filled with rows of skilled workers, rolling tobacco by hand, while a lector sat at the front of the room reading aloud newspapers, novels, even political speeches to keep everyone entertained. It was work, but it was also culture. To fuel this industry, Ybor City welcomed immigrants like few other places in the South at the time, and so Tampa became a true immigrant hub. Cubans were the backbone, bringing not just their craft, but their food, music, and traditions. Spanish immigrants came too, working in cigars and opening their own mutual aid clubs. Then came the Italians, mostly Sicilian, who might have started in cigar factories, but soon became the ones opening groceries, bakeries, and restaurants that kept the community fed. And sprinkled in came Germans and Eastern Europeans. And all of this matters because when you bite into a Cuban sandwich, you're not just tasting ham, pork, pickles, mustard, and cheese. You're tasting Ybor City. The Cubans brought the pork and ham. The Spaniards helped build the bread culture. The Italians tossed in the salami. Yes, Tampa's Cuban sandwich has salami, and that's not up for debate if you're standing in Hillsborough County. The Germans and Jews, they're the reason that you get the mustard and those crunchy pickles cutting through the richness. It's kind of like a sandwich boy band. Each of these players adds their own personality and archetype. Eddie, this Cuban sandwich, Tampa version, has all of these different cultural influences in it. Is there any other food that you can think of that also contains such a melding of different cultural ingredients?
Oh, wow. That's such a great question. I just want to get this out of my head, but I'm also you mentioned boy band. Mixto, also a great name for a boy band.
Yes. Okay. So Mixto. Oh, wow. Okay. So maybe we also do a reality show, making of the band in Mixto. And just like they did, I don't know if this is at all in your zeitgeist, but they had a show like this called O-Town, but it was the boy band was O-Town and it was created in Orlando. So I think it's due time for this. Okay, this is really good.
I'm going to go off and write a boy band show or movie called Mixto, and I'll give you credit. Don't worry, we'll share.
Okay, well, I would absolutely like to be a producer on this project. So,
but that's
please keep me in the loop.
There's such a great. That's such a great question. First of all, I hadn't even thought of like just how much influence there is in the Cuban sandwich. Because again, called the Cuban sandwich, so you just think, oh wait, but there are these other, I love the German, Italian influence. What other food has, I can't think when
I know. Yeah, I only started doing this recently where whenever I pose a question to guests, I'm like, you know what, I should answer it in my mind's eye too, how I
yeah,
would
do you have
answer
one?
it just to yeah, it was really, really hard for me. And I just did it kind of like off the cuff. And I did not allow myself to do any looking up online, Googling, anything like that. But then it was like a kind of a lame example, but I thought, and very specific too. But I was like, pineapple pizza. Well, I know it's very polarizing and many people just are like cringing at it. I was like, well, okay, so pizza, you know, we're thinking Italy, but then tomatoes are not indigenous to Italy. Shout out to the History of Tomatoes episode that you can watch on YouTube or available wherever you get podcasts.
Well, I was going to say, it's news to me. I associate,
Okay.
tomatoes with Italy for sure.
Yeah, they did not make it there until the 16th century. They are a little bit of a spoilie, indigenous to South America. So yes, so you know there was that kind of adaptation there, and then you know I know it's for funsies, we're throwing on the toppings, but pineapple certainly you know is not. And I know we're now getting out of because they're not serving that in Italy, but just as a lame example, I was like, well, that is different cultures right there into one kind of a dish, but it's not as classic or composed or well known as the Cuban sandwich. So yeah, maybe the Cuban sandwich just reigns supreme.
Yeah. Hey, you said it better. You say it than I.
Yeah. Now, in case you're an Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown fan and happen to catch the episode in Miami and curious about the Medianoche, let's clarify something real quick. If the Cuban sandwich is the heavyweight champ of the lunch table, then the Medianoche is its sly late-night sibling who slips in after hours. The two share the same DNA, roast pork, ham, Swiss cheese, mustard, and pickles, but the real twist comes down to the bread. The Cubano is all business, built on sturdy, crackly Cuban bread, brushed with lard, pressed, and ready to fuel cigar factory workers throughout the day. The Medianoche, literally meaning midnight, is the softer counterpart. Instead of Cuban bread, it comes tucked inside a pillowy, slightly sweet, eggy roll that's more in line with a brioche or challah. It was the darling of Havana's late-night crowd, the go-to bite after hours of rum, smoke, and dancing to mambo in the city's nightclubs. Lighter in texture and sweeter in taste, it made the perfect nightcap snack. Think of it this way. The Cubano is the workday sandwich. The Medianoche is the party sandwich. One clocks in at the factory, the other sneaks out to the club. Eddie, the Medianoche, have you had it? Thoughts?
I have many thoughts. Right now, I'm just thinking of how tasty it is and how I want one.
Sure.
It was, when I was thinking about this, I said Cuban sandwich, but really, if I'm honest, there are times where I like the Medianoche more than I do a Cuban sandwich. And they are so related, but sometimes you do crave that sweeter. There's this place growing up in Hialeah that had both, but they were more known for their Medianoche. And just thinking about that bread, the sweeter, eggier bread with this sort of like the butter that's put on top of it when it's pressed, it's just so tasty. So there are some times where I go to a restaurant outside of Miami, want to try their Cuban sandwich, but if they have Medianoche on the menu, I might go that route depending how I'm feeling. And maybe it's that, am I feeling like a night owl that day, or am I more business? I'm going to use that sort of mindset. I think of that, this is like a throwback, but Nelly, the rapper, had this album called Sweatsuit, and it was like half of it was like sweat and sort of that kind of like day worker kind of like, those kind of songs had that kind of feel. And then Suit was like the more put together, I'm going out. Ooh. So now I'm going to associate Nelly and Sweatsuit with the Medianoche and the Cuban sandwich. I love it.
Okay, here's another pitch. So we go to Nelly and we're like, listen, we've got this idea. We're creating this city called Mixto. What do you think about setting up a shop there? You're kind of like the spokesperson. It's a Cubano and Mixto you can get off menu. And Medianoche sandwich shop.
Also, Nelly, you are in the music industry. Do you want to produce our boy band, also called Mixto?
Oh my God.
And you are a celebrity. Yes. Do you know George Foreman? Do you have his number? This is how
my mind has just, these are how great things are started.
Yes. I came on as a podcast guest, left as a business partner.
Yeah, who knew? See, good things can come out of unexpected places. It happened here. I love it. I'm into it. So, who invented the Cuban sandwich? Well, it wasn't invented by one chef with a light bulb moment. It was invented by a neighborhood where cigars paid the rent, immigrants made the city, and food told the story of who lived there. When you press a Cuban sandwich today, what you're really pressing is the story of Ybor City, layers of immigrant history stacked together. By 1915, bakeries like La Segunda Central Bakery were cranking out the definitive Cuban bread, long, crusty on the outside, soft on the inside, with that signature palmetto leaf baked across the top. Kaboom shaboom, the full Tampa Cuban sandwich is born. In Tampa, public eateries, worker cafes, restaurants like Columbia used ways of heating those sandwiches, baking, oven heating, maybe stovetop warming in their kitchens. As demand grew and as tools became available, like griddles, metal irons, and planchas, people began applying pressure as part of cooking, first using improvised tools like bricks, later using purpose-made presses. And by the mid-20th century, 1940s, 1950s, and onward, pressing on a plancha or grill had become part of the standard Cuban sandwich experience in Tampa. Well, our Cuban sandwich story doesn't stop with Tampa. Enter Miami, but actually much later. Miami doesn't really rise as a Cuban sandwich player until after the Cuban Revolution of 1959, when waves of Cuban exiles make the city their home. They bring food traditions with them, of course, but here's the catch. In Miami, there's no Italian salami in the mix. Miami's Cuban sandwich is essentially the Havana Mixto evolved, but without the immigrant remix of Tampa. It's roast pork, ham, Swiss pickles, mustard, and Cuban bread. No salami. And this is where the great sandwich rivalry takes root. Tampa says, the real Cuban has salami because history, duh. Miami fires back, no way. Salami's an Italian thing. That's not authentic. Both sides dig in, and honestly, they're both right. Tampa's version reflects immigrant cross-pollination at the turn of the century. Miami's version reflects Cuban exile identity post-1959. Two different moments in Cuban American history expressed through one sandwich. So we've got our Cuban sandwich roots, Havana's Mixto, Tampa's immigrant mashup, Miami's sleek South Florida twist. But how does this humble worker sandwich go from being a neighborhood specialty to a sandwich you can find from Portland to Paris? First, let's not gloss over the fact that Tampa and Miami have been in a low-grade food war over the true Cuban for decades. That rivalry actually helped the sandwich spread because both cities were saying, we own the Cuban. Meanwhile, the rest of the U.S. was saying, great, whatever, we'll take one of each. Eddie, as a writer, director, and actor, I know that you've actually created a story of the Cuban sandwich, which I encourage everybody to check out and watch. It has a bit of a creative twist to it. Would you like to share the details of that?
Sure. So it's called Jamonton. Like, it sounds like Hamilton. It's basically like a Cuban parody of Hamilton. At the time, I had not seen Hamilton. I was just aware of the main, the opening song, and just hearing Hamilton made me think of jamon, ham. So I think I wrote that up when maybe like 2016, just wrote a parody version of it and didn't do anything with it. And then 4 years later, the pandemic came around and everyone was stuck at home. And I heard that Hamilton, the filmed version, was coming out on Disney Plus. So I was like, well, I have this song that I wrote and now I'm stuck at home. So I just filmed it myself and I put it online right around the time that the film came out on Disney Plus. And it's essentially the story of, instead of Alexander Hamilton, one of our founding fathers, it's Alejandro Jamonton, the creator of the Cuban sandwich. And, it was so fun. I played all the roles and I'm not, although I can carry a tune, I'm not exactly a singer. But
well, no shade to Lin-Manuel Miranda, but
I do.
He's not a professional singer either. So,
but we both
we
okay. Try to sell it with as much bravado as we can.
Yes, it's all in charisma,
yes, that's
right?
It. That's half the battle. So I put it online, and it just, whether it's because Hamilton came out or people were stuck at home or people really love Hamilton, it got a lot of views. And next thing I know, I'm being interviewed by local South Florida news people, Tim Paget from NPR Miami. We did an interview, and what I didn't expect was this rivalry that you're speaking of. All of a sudden, there was this section of people online commenting. Everyone was very much like positive, which is great because most of the time the internet is
love
not.
That.
They were like, I love this, so funny. However, and then paragraphs of just like these diatribes of the Cuban sandwich actually originated in Tampa, or the Tampa one has salami. And the way I wrote it, the first one, without thinking I would do more of these, the Aaron Burr character, because, you know, we need who's the antagonist. The Aaron Burr character, as I wrote it, I think is the one that added mayonnaise. I didn't put salami because I wasn't even aware. So but he's the one that added mayonnaise because I've seen that before, and that's kind of like a faux pas. So then with that in mind, and the video did so well, and I was still, again, we were all stuck at home. I was like, well, if Aaron Burr is the antagonist and everyone's talking about Tampa, how they created the Cuban sandwich and it has to have salami, I was like, well, then Aaron Burr has to naturally represent Tampa and Ybor City. So I wrote a follow-up where we focused on the Aaron Burr character, and my dear friend Trevon Davis, who I met when I first came to LA and did the CBS Diversity Showcase. He's super talented, like has performed on Broadway, Book of Mormon, Lion King. He did the Aaron Burr, and he was sort of lamenting about this Alejandro Hamilton character. Everyone's saying, oh, he's creator of the Cuban sandwich, but really it's this sandwich with salami. So that was so much fun to do. And I did a couple more videos after that. But yeah, I look back at that time, such a crazy time in our lives. But the fact that I did something so silly that resonated with people and allowed us to share our love of the Cuban sandwich and slight hatred, I guess, towards each other. But it was very friendly. Like you said, I love to hear that this rivalry and this good-natured competition helped the Cuban sandwich sort of spread elsewhere, which is great. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you foresee anywhere in the near future, perhaps a Broadway or off-Broadway adaptation?
You know, out of respect to Lynn and also not wanting to be forced into any legal battles, I don't know. But I've written 4 of them, 4 songs. I have in my mind, you know, what that would be. And Tim from NPR was like, well, you know, you should do a one night only full performance of this in Miami. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I'm just, they just celebrated their 10-year anniversary of the show. So much success. And so that marks 5 years since I've done Hamilton. Who knows? Maybe in the 10-year of Hamilton, we'll try to make something happen.
Okay, something to look forward to. I think it could be a huge success. I will be there front row and center. So I don't know. Keep me posted.
Thank you. Thanks so much. No, but this has been great because, again, I didn't really know all the history and the controversy around it until I made those videos. And now you're peppering in more details. Again, I thinking of it's the immigrant influence, which ties in so well with Hamilton of this sandwich is great to find out more about.
Well, by the 1970s and 80s, you didn't have to be in Florida to eat a Cuban sandwich. Cuban exile communities spread to New Jersey, New York, and beyond, and so did their restaurants. If you were near Union City, New Jersey, you could find a pressed Cuban. If you were walking through Manhattan, you'd stumble upon one in a deli. Then came chain restaurants and food media. Travel writers began writing love letters to the Cubano as a must-try regional food. Cookbooks and food shows picked it up. And by the 1990s, the Cuban was showing up in sandwich shops across the U.S., often Americanized, sometimes poorly imitated, but always recognizable. By the late 20th century, the Cuban sandwich had gone from local lunch staple to a symbol of Florida food culture. Tampa even declared it the city's official sandwich in 2012, planting a flag in the salami camp. Miami, of course, continues to push its own version as the real deal. And the Cuban sandwich's big pop culture moment arguably comes in 2014 with the movie Chef, directed by Jon Favreau. In it, Favreau's character quits his fine dining chef job, starts a food truck, and wins over America one Cubano at a time. Eddie, have you seen the movie Chef?
I have, yes. I love the representation. I also immediately, when you mentioned Jon Favreau, I mean, I love his work. I also love that he casts like the most beautiful women as his like love interests. So that's the first thing I was like, okay, I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, why would you not? Why would you not?
Like,
yes, if you have the power.
I guess the food is so good that he attracted all, you know. But no, I love anytime there is that representation. You know, sometimes Cubans can be, like I said, prideful, and people from Miami specifically. But I'm all for, because it's like, oh, Jon Favreau, is he Cuban? Like, what is he doing? You know, but I'm very much like, hey, whatever gets it out there, what help us get that exposure.
Yeah. Yeah. I have seen the movie. It has been a hot minute, probably since, not too long after. I didn't see it in theaters. I don't believe it was when it came out afterwards. Don't tell John.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it. So I'll have to, this motivates me to see where I can find it and maybe tap back in, see if it's aged well, see how it is.
Yeah, I do love any sort of, whether it's a movie or, when Chef's Table was super popular. Yeah, how do you feel as a chef yourself? How do you feel about representation of your sort of world in film or TV?
So this may be interesting or not, and maybe this resonates with people. So, truth be told, when people ask me, "Oh, you must love Chef's Table, and do you watch The Bear, and do you watch the Great British Bake Off, and all this stuff?" And I was like, actually, I've never seen any of those, because for me, when I choose to watch something, for me, it's more not escapism necessarily, but I don't need to see the kind of things that I'm doing necessarily.
Totally.
Because I think in a way, and this is just me speaking, but sometimes, people can glean from it, this is inspirational, or this is very inspiring. For me, sometimes I'm like, oh no, look at this person doing this, that, and the other. It's just, this makes me feel badly about myself that I'm not either at this level, or I haven't thought of this, or whatever the case is. So I'm like, you know what? I just need to cut the noise and not even worry about that. So instead, I watch shows like Love is Blind and true crime documentaries. Those fuel my viewing hours instead. But I think what is important in those type of shows is, as you mentioned, the food storytelling and representation. And in a way, I think for me, starting this show has filled that for me, in terms of being able to talk about all different cultural foods, their origins, having different guests on with their perspectives. So for me, that's the way that I've joined those worlds, as opposed to viewing the other finely produced and acclaimed shows that are out there. No shade, no shade, no shade. But yeah, I don't really
No, that makes total sense. I'm just thinking, as I asked that, I'm like, duh, I mostly work in comedy, and I don't then sit and watch a ton of comedy. Like, I'll pick out the one or two shows that I'm like, oh, everyone's talking about, I should check this out. But I often am not. I want to turn off my brain, because sometimes it can feel like work, or you kind of know how the sausage gets made.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we're on the same page. This is good. So where does this all leave us today? The Cuban sandwich is no longer confined to Havana, Tampa, or Miami. It's a global ambassador of Cuban and Cuban American culture. You can still grab one at La Segunda Bakery or the historic Columbia restaurant. In Miami, spots like Versailles serve up their no salami version daily. And across the U.S., Cuban sandwiches appear in food trucks and gastropubs. It's a cultural statement of a sandwich. It tells the history and story of migration, community, and food as identity. Tampa's Cuban says, we are the sum of our immigrant roots. Miami's Cuban says, we are the essence of Cuban exile culture. Both are valid, both are delicious. And like any good symbol, it sparks debate, passion, and maybe a little hunger just talking about it. So whether you're Team Tampa with your salami or Team Miami without, it's a story of how people carry their culture with them, and how that culture transforms when it meets new places, new people, and new ingredients. Eddie, what do you think about the backstory of the Cuban sandwich?
I love it. I love that there's, again, so much different immigrant influences to this sandwich. I love that people love it so much that they feel so passionate to have this kind of rivalry about it. And yeah, I'm glad that just more and more people are getting to experience this. Although I will say, if you have the chance, just because I'm from Miami, go to Miami, get yourself a really good Cuban sandwich, so you can, in my opinion, what my origin and what my understanding of the Cuban sandwich and what I love so deeply about it is that specific taste that you get from a Miami Cuban. So I implore everyone, if you have the opportunity, like you said, Versailles or any place in Miami that you can, give it a try.
Well, our Cuban sandwich here has made its way into some recent pop culture moments. On May 17th, 2024, Tampa hosted a Cuban sandwich eating contest at the J.C. Newman Cigar Co. The winner, Nick Weary, ate Eddie, would you like to guess how many sandwiches Nick was able to eat in 8 minutes?
I'm so nervous for Nick because it's such a tasty sandwich, but I can't imagine you could eat many of these in 8 minutes.
In 8 minutes.
I mean, did he scarf down more than 10?
So you said 10. All right. And by Price is Right rules, you would be correct. And this might blow your mind and also make you feel very badly for Nick. It was actually 22 Cuban sandwiches.
Are these full-size Cuban sandwiches?
As far as I know, they are regular-sized Cuban sandwiches.
And this was Tampa, so there's also salami in there. He had that extra ingredient. Oh, Lord. I don't know how you do that. I honestly don't know. Because I'm thinking of like Joey Chestnut and all these hot dog competitive eaters.
Maybe he had the water and he was dipping them in.
But there's so much, it's like you dunk the bun and then you eat the hot dog. This is like you're dunking the Cuban sandwich and then you have a handful of pork and melted Swiss cheese and pickles and man. Well,
just be glad it wasn't you.
Yes, I would never. You cannot pay me to eat that many.
On July 28th, 2024, chefs and volunteers in Tampa built the longest Cuban sandwich ever recorded. It was a collaboration between the International Cuban Sandwich Festival and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The sandwich was then distributed at the New Beginnings of Tampa, a charity, so it wouldn't go to waste. Eddie, we're back to our guessing game here. Can you guess? Now, not one person consumed all of this, so blessings.
Although Nick wanted to. He was there.
Yeah.
And he was like...
He was there and he's just like licking his chops. Yeah, I know. He was like, guys, did you hear about my 22-8 in 8 minutes? Think of the damage that I could do. Well, okay, so maybe I should fact check whether he was in attendance or not. I am not sure. But do you want to take a guess of how long this sandwich was in feet?
I'm going to, again, shoot for the stars. This was a 50-foot sandwich.
Okay, well, again, by Price is Right rules, you would win there, but this was actually 365 feet long.
Whoa, I need to see a photo ASAP.
Columbia Restaurant in Tampa was voted Florida's best Cuban sandwich by Southern Living readers for 2024. In September 2025, New York Times Cooking made a video for their series Sandwich City called NYC's Best Cubano is Hidden in Times Square, which features the 55-year-old Margon restaurant that serves hundreds of Cuban sandwiches daily. And August 23rd has become National Cuban Sandwich Day. Eddie, are there any other pop culture moments that you can think of or any final words you have about your favorite food?
Long live the Cubano in more ways than one, but long live the Cuban sandwich, yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Well, you could also put that on a shirt for merch. So we're really stacking it up pretty well here. Eddie, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about the Cuban sandwich and helping me to tell its story.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for all the info. I feel like I've walked away. Now I've graduated into like a true scholar of the Cuban sandwich.
Thanks for watching. You can find links and more info in the description below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. See you next time.